Hello again, and welcome to another episode of Alternative Viewpoint. We continue with our series of podcasts on Cavendish Court, a modern tale of Animal Farm. Today, our discussion centres around Prime Property Management, who is the property manager for Cavendish Court. According to their website, and I quote this from their About page, Prime Property Management was founded in 2012 by Stephen Wiles, who started the company having become frustrated with the poor service and excessive costs from the managing agent of his own flat. Stephen found that there was little advice and guidance available for leaseholders who were unsatisfied with their current managing agent. Stephen was determined that leaseholders should receive a better deal from their managing agent, and under his guidance, Prime has helped numerous leaseholders achieve excellent quality flat management, often at far lower costs. Stephen has over 10 years' experience in flat management and passionately believes in putting leaseholders in control of their block. Prime advertise their values as driving everything we do, guiding our actions and shaping our future to ensure we consistently deliver excellence. Their purpose, we exist to put life before lease. Their vision, fair, safe, quality living for all. This podcast will reveal whether Prime has managed to live up to all the claims they make on their website. Are they truly working for the leaseholders? Or are they just another rip-off managing agent whose sole interest is making money from leaseholders' ignorance and inexperience? Let's listen and find out.
How did Prime Management Agency come into being?
Well, I think they came from one of the leaseholders who found them. They are about the third company since I think it was Acorn. They weren't happy with Acorn services, and they got rid of that one. And then they brought in another company. The leaseholders. They brought in...
So it was a combined decision.
No, I think it was the director's decision to sack the next company.
And who was the director then?
At the time, the directors were Rob, and I know only of Rob really. Brett as well, and George and Kaleem and Salim. All those people were directors at some points in the past, right? It was one of the directors who brought in Prime Property Management.
So this was the third management agency
they had a company called House before, and they weren't happy with it. So there was David Atkin had managed this building. They were appointed by the freeholders, Skill Crown, and they had managed this building for nearly 15 years up until 2012. And then after that, Skill Crown changed to another company because the leaseholders were complaining about David Atkin's performance. And so the Skill Crown, who was still the freeholder at the time, changed it to another company called Acorn. But then the leaseholder again decided they weren't happy with this company. So they formed Right to Manage then. And then they got rid of Acorn, and then they hired House. Again, they were not happy with House, so they sacked House, and then they hired Prime Property Management. And Prime Property Management took over in 2017.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great. Okay, so it's about 7 years, 8 years now. Okay,
yeah.
So there was clearly a process within your leaseholders. They were able to assess and decide that this is not okay, and we want to do this and stuff. And what is different from 2012 to now in terms of the leaseholders? Have the leaseholders changed, and have the directors and all that changed?
Directors have changed. Leaseholders themselves haven't changed.
So they're the same.
Some, maybe one or two people have moved out and new people have moved in, but leaseholders haven't changed really.
Okay, and the directors, all of them have changed?
Yeah, all of them have changed. So we started off with Brett, Rob, and Salim, I think, for a while, and then it went on with, and then Salim went, and then there were other people like Kaleem and George and Sir, and they came on they took over with Brett, and and Rob. So Brett and Rob were the long-term directors. They were Rob was the main one, and Brett was like he was also a director of Right to Manage since the beginning as well.
Okay.
Right up until I think they got Right to Manage in about 2014.
Right. Okay. So today, who are the directors today?
The directors currently are James and Mamas. Yeah.
And they have been directors since
last year?
Last year.
Really? Yeah.
Okay. Right. So now you were mentioning there were some problems.
Well, since Right to Manage, the problem is really with the lack of maintenance in the building. I mean, the building has suffered quite considerably. There's been clear neglect of the building. You've seen the photographs yourself. You've seen how it has deteriorated and how awful it looks. So there's been clear neglect. And this is down.
In fact, you also showed me some of the things you got it done out of your own pocket.
Right. So that's the state of the building since Right to Manage. So Right to Manage, as you can see, it hasn't actually made it better. The leaseholder having control of the building haven't actually made it better, as you can see in the photographs. And in my opinion, that's down to the level of ignorance among the leaseholder. And there's extreme ignorance, in my opinion, in this building. It's very difficult. I've tried to, the years when I've tried to get things done, I've come across apathy, with the others in the building, the other leaseholders. What we have is just general apathy. And then with the others, it's disagreement that leads to fights among them. I think with some of them, it's clear it was a fight about power. It's also people wanting to be directors but couldn't do the job, but they want to be directors, and that's the problem.
Mm-hmm. Right. So, although it's been that has been the problem since 2017.
Yeah, like for instance,
2014.
Brett has been a director since the formation of Right to Manage. But when I was drafted in as director and I was working alongside him, I found that he was totally clueless. He didn't have a clue about even how to do the basic things. He didn't understand. He's American for one thing, and he doesn't understand leaseholds and freeholds.
Interesting.
The only thing he understood was that he wanted to be a director. So after the freehold was completed, he made himself the director of the freehold company. He was also director of the Right to Manage. So he became the director of the whole building, essentially.
You're saying he became director of two things?
Yeah, both companies, the Right to Manage and the freehold company.
Oh, okay. Right to Manage is a company as well. Okay.
Yeah, Right to Manage is a company and the freehold is a company. Primarily, the problem is Prime Property Management. Since they took over, they have done no improvement to this building. And in my opinion, it's because they don't know how to do the job. I've had disputes with with Prime in the past. The first time that they showed their lack of knowledge was when they were asked to draft the Section 6 notice in response to the right of first refusal when we were buying the freehold. Stephen Wiles, who is the owner of Prime, was asked to draft a response to the freeholders' Section 5. He could not do the job, and he drafted something which was sent to the freeholder solicitor. And because it was so poorly done, the freeholders rejected it. And the freehold was then immediately sold to another company. And that's how we lost it. And after that, so I came in and I pursued the new freeholder, Coney. And I had to salvage the freehold after it was lost. Right?
Oh, you managed to salvage?
Yeah, the freehold was sold to Coney for 60,000, and I pursued them for about a year, and in the end they sold it back to us for 115,000.
Wow.
Which was a lucky escape, because they could easily have charged like more than 300,000.
But you lost 55,000 because of some
Because of
technical issues of that prime location. Yeah,
not technical, legal. Legal. It's just incompetence.
That's right.
He didn't know how to. He didn't know how to draft the Section 6, even though it was quite fairly straightforward. It was really like collecting people's name and addresses, and maybe their signature as well. But to have their names and addresses to say these are the leaseholder who will buy the freehold, and submit that to the freeholder solicitor, and that was essentially. But he couldn't do that. It's like I said in my other podcast when I was explaining it to Mr. Sims. I looked at the document he did, and he didn't even have people's name correctly. There were names, first name, no surname, and addresses were all over the place.
Oh dear.
Yeah, it was.
It didn't look professional at all. It didn't look like
a 5-year-old could have done a better job than that. Like, let's put it that way.
Oh dear.
And then the next problem we had was when one of the leaseholders complained about prime service charge. He said that the service charge did not make sense to him, and he needed to have a statement of account in order to do his tax return on his property. Prime did not comply with that request. They withheld the statement of accounts from him, and he got into a dispute with Prime over that. His response to that was to say, well, if you're not going to give me the statement of account, then I'm not going to pay you. And then and after that, he stopped. At the time,
I think that's a kind of required, isn't it? What services are you going to be providing, and service account, like you're saying, the account of the services you'll provide for the charge you're charging.
Yeah, well, the statement of account essentially tells you the expenditures for the company, and it's an audited account, which is it's like an accountant's report.
So there's no reason to hide, really.
No, there wasn't. I don't.
Unless they've not created it. There should not be any reason to hide.
When Samuel told me, he said that he hadn't received it, and when I approached Stephen Wiles about it, he said that it's on the service charge, and I said that's not enough. He wanted an audit report and a statement of account, and you need to give that to him. Initially, I think that Stephen Wiles did not understand what it was. So it was quite difficult because he didn't seem to understand. So I looked through the service charge that they sent us, and I actually noticed there was a mistake on the service charge. And I checked up the law regarding that, and it says if there was a mistake, then actually the leaseholder would be within their rights to withhold the service charge. And there was a clear mistake on there.
What was the mistake?
The mistake was that he had the incorrect address for the freeholder. So on the service charge demand, you need to list like the freeholder's address, because it's the freeholder who's demanding the service charge, and it was incorrect. He put his own business address.
Oh.
The leaseholder, who was the first to spot that Prime's paperwork wasn't up to scratch, was the Samuel, and he requested a statement of account from Prime. Prime did not give it to him. I don't know why they didn't do that, because like you said, that was something that leaseholders
expect.
Yeah,
because you're paying for it, you want to know what you're paying for.
Yeah, so they should get that statement of account every year. I know that with under David Atkin, he used to do that every year, and he used to send it out as a binded document in the post to people.
One copy to each leaseholder.
Yeah, he did not just send the service charge; he actually sent out the statement of account in a binded document. And Prime did not do that. Samuel then, after that, got into a dispute with Stephen. He says basically, if you don't give me the statement of accounts, I'm not going to pay you the service charge. And then he withheld his service charge. And I got involved because his issue came up in one of the meetings, one of the directors' meeting. The other directors, they didn't do anything about it. And even though it had been going on for a long time, they just thought, okay, Prime will take care of it. They just leave it to Prime to do something about it, which I think is wrong. Like, you need to find out what's the problem and see, why they're not paying, and sort out the problems. So because the others weren't getting involved, and what Prime was passing it back to the directors to try and sort out, they were more interested in doing other things. So I took it on, and I started speaking to Samuel, and then he told me what was happening. And that was when I looked into Prime's paperwork, and I looked at the service charge that he was sending out. And the first thing I spotted was like they had an incorrect address on there for the freeholder. And by law, if that was incorrect, then he could withhold his service charge. And then the next thing I noticed was his figures on the service charge. They were wildly inaccurate. Like, they didn't match. It primarily relates to the previous year's expenditure. And this is why Samuel asked for the statement of account, because on the service charge, even though they publish the previous year's expenditure, they were all incorrect. Like, they were all incorrect. They were literally like thousands of
Copy-paste kind of thing. Copy of the previous service charge or something.
I don't know where they got their figures from, but when I looked at it closely, they would have, for instance, like they would publish 2018, 2019, previous year's annual year's expenditure, and like, so that on the 2019 they would be 2018, like on the 2020 they would be 2019, 2018, but the figures on the 20 and 19 for 2018 did not match. So it looks, and I don't know why that was. I just thought that, well, there's something wrong here.
The cost might have gone up or down.
Well, it can't have gone up or down because it's already been spent.
Okay.
This is previous year's expenditure.
Yeah.
It's not current expenditure. So it should have been signed off.
Right.
It should have been audited and signed off. And yet, for some reason, they're just picking up like strange figures from it. And I noticed on one of the statements, they actually published like that we spent £9,000 on the garden, which I thought was ridiculous because the garden looked awful. And you
didn't ever see anybody come to do anything in the garden.
Yeah. So how can we spend £9,000 on the garden in a year? And I said, no, that's not this. There was serious accounting issues with Prime at the time. And we went back to them and I explained to them, you've got problems here. I want you to tell me why is it that you've got all these different figures for all these years' expenditure, and how much is it how much was the actual expenditure? What is the actual figures for previous years? But Stephen Wells again, this is when I'm beginning to realize that this person doesn't really know what he's doing, because he didn't understand. He said, I don't know what he didn't understand. He didn't even understand when I said, look, can you just look at the service charge and tell me why is it that 2018 has got 5 different figures?
Right.
5 different figures for 1 year. Then he still did not know.
And he did not know. He did not know himself, and he did not have anybody else in the company who could help him understand it.
Yeah, nobody was giving a straight answer. And
is it a legal requirement that the accounts are kind of audited?
Yeah, they should be.
Oh, so okay. So they should have auditable accounts available.
Yeah.
For viewing.
Yeah. So I started. So I asked him for all the previous years' invoices starting in 2018. I asked for all the invoices. And I went through the invoices, and again, they didn't match any of the figures that's on his sheet. That's on his, even with the audited figures, they didn't really match. And maybe that's because there's some, because of the way the financial year is structured, it might come, some of them might have crossed over, but still there was discrepancies. And we tried for months and months to get an answer from this company. And at the time as well, I started looking at the state of the building, and I was quite horrified to see how awful it looked. There was clear neglect, right? They haven't been doing the job. They haven't been doing the maintenance job that they were supposed to do.
So in fact, they were worse than the was it David somebody you mentioned?
Yeah, David Atkins. Yeah, the previous.
So it was worse than David Atkins, was it?
Yeah, it was 100 times worse.
Okay.
I mean, the garage looked like something from a horror film. You've seen the photographs. Mm-hmm. Those photographs, that's how it looked. And this building is only 27 years old.
Right.
That's how long the neglect has been. We started complaining about the lack of maintenance as well.
Directly to the company?
Yeah, to
Prime.
the Prime, and again, not much response. So in the end, a few of us decided to say, okay, there's no way, then we need to go to the first-tier tribunal for him to explain what's going on. And we put in there the complaints also about their lack of management. But in the first-tier tribunal, the judges were only interested in the annual service charge. Their interest was they thought the service charge was unreasonable. Not whether or not it was, because they saw it as being quite low. Their conclusion was that it was not unreasonable, and their conclusion with regards to the discrepancies in the figures was that there were audited statements, but again, it's like we didn't receive them, so we didn't see them. So there were audited statements, and the service charge was not unreasonable, but they did not look at the maintenance by this company. So, and they found it in favour of Prime. So then, but after that,
this was which year? Which year?
This is maybe about 2020. Mm-hmm. After that, the lack of maintenance continued. They just didn't do anything, and it's down to the fact I don't think the Prime knows what they're doing.
And with the judges' thing in their favour, they became even more confident of not doing anything if they were not doing anything before.
Exactly, like you said. Like they carried on the way they were before. And there was the leaseholder, myself, Samuel, Oliver, and Simon, and so emailing them and tell them that what they're doing is not enough. Their management is not good enough, and we've got serious problems. We've got problems with vermin, mice and rats infestation in the building. We have problems with rubbish. You've seen all the rubbish that's dumped around. I mean, those were just recent photographs. I mean, over the years there were probably more, but because I wasn't documenting that. But you see the amount of rubbish that gets dumped in this building, and there were problems. Of course, there was the total neglect of the garden as well. Like again, Prime did nothing about. And then we had sewage spillage in the building from 2020 to 2024. We had
4 years.
Yeah, I think we had one at least once a year. There was always some kind of flooding, and it would come from the drains. Mm-hmm. So the drains would get blocked or something. I read one of the reports from the people who came to fix the problem, and they said there was branches or something that was blocking the drains. That's why it was causing this. And that's down to the lack of maintenance in the garden again. There was a problem with the air vents. The garden is right next to a car park, underground car park, and there are air vents there. And there are these...
The car park is for the building.
Yeah. And there are these things called louvres that were in the garden, and they had been rusting for years and years and years, and they should really have been replaced, prior to by 2018 or something at least. So in my opinion, if a company was professional, Prime should have actually spotted that and replaced that, or do something to replace those louvres, which they never did. And again, we have problems with trees over shallow roots in the garden that were from the trees that were there were 8 trees in the gardens, and they have roots growing above the surface, and these roots were I can see that they've caused some damage in the garden, and they were moving towards the building. And again, it's like Prime never saw that. And the other thing they did was that they blocked any meetings for 4 years or 3 years.
Blocked meaning they did not want to have any meetings. They did not have any meetings.
Yeah. So we told them we want to have an AGM. They didn't have any AGMs. And
did they give any reasons?
Well, they said that the directors said they didn't want to have a meeting. So
which directors?
The directors current at the time.
Of Prime or of
of the RTM company.
Ah.
They were Nicole.
So they were just
George.
going by their employer then, in that sense.
Yeah, and according to Prime, they said that they don't need to have meetings if directors doesn't want to have meetings. But also by Company House law, they say that if more than 5% of shareholders in the company request a meeting, they are obliged to hold a meeting. Well, there was 5 out of 24. There was more than 5% who have been telling them we want to have a meeting. And again, they just ignored that as well. So that was how it was. So they didn't do any work. And they didn't hold any meetings. They blocked all meetings.
But they still continued charging.
Yeah, they still continued charging, and and some of the leaseholders, they were not happy with that kind of behaviour from this property management, because the building was so awful. It's just, the neglect is costing on our property if we don't fix the problems. So it's costing us, and we're being charged for something that we're not being, we're in charge of a service that's non-rendered. And this company was totally incumbent. They didn't care. And again, they just took the money and go. So what happened was, I had to say to one of the leaseholders that we need to call the others. We need to call a meeting of everybody, and push and pressure Prime to do something, because it was just getting really bad, because I was getting quite frustrated with them. So Oliver started emailing everybody, calling for a meeting, and it was because of the others who are now joining in that Prime finally arranged a meeting in March 2024, the AGM in 2024. And in that meeting, one of the things that was supposed to happen was that we were supposed to get rid of the current directors because they were not doing the job. They were actually being quite vindictive, the director George and Nicole, by withholding meetings. What motivated them to do something like that?
And they didn't feel answerable either to any leaseholders.
No,
that
they
is
weren't.
a bit
You see,
strange.
that's the mentality of the people in this building that you're going to come to understand, is that there's a lot of infighting. And there's a lot of people who are wanting to assert themselves over others.
Yes, from what you're saying, it looks like an authoritarian style of managing.
Yeah. There's definitely an authoritarian managing style in this building, and the times I've said that this building reminds me of Animal Farm, the story in so many ways. And yes, so Nicole and George there, she didn't respond to anybody. She didn't do anything as a director. I think she largely just wanted to be a director. She did because she wanted to have authority over this building. And in the meeting, Nicole and George were supposed to be voted out as director, and they were voted out. And I was voted in as the director again.
2024.
Yeah. But afterwards, Prime Property Management did not remove Nicole and George from the directorship. They just kept them on. Because I had challenged Prime for so many years. That's why they disliked me. And they knew that if I was to be a director, their days were numbered, essentially. The first thing that I would do was to sack them, to remove them. Because they were incompetent.
That's right.
They were totally incompetent.
Or they would have to do work, maybe.
They can't do the work. That's the problem, is that they don't even know how to do the work. The problems that we've had were easily... they weren't difficult. They weren't challenging. They were easily solvable.
It looks like from what you're saying that if they had the intent and any basic common sense, they could have addressed the issues.
Of course. They call themselves professional property management company. They don't even know that there's a problem with the rusty roofs. They didn't see that. And they didn't even know how to do a service charge demand. These figures was all over the place. And they didn't even know that we had problems in the garden. They didn't know how to solve the problem with all the rubbish that was being dumped around the building. That's from leaseholders, from the tenants and stuff. And the sewage. All they did was just call in some professional coming in, and they would just basically unblock the sewage. Unblock the drains. But they didn't solve the problem because it would just come back, right? And we also had a pensioner in the building, Mr. Sims, who had been complaining to Prime for 7 years, since 2017, that he wanted a bush outside the building to be cut down because he needed to read his gas meters, and
it was hindering his access to the gas meter.
Yeah, the bushes were hindering his access to the gas meter, and he said that every time he went to try and read the gas meter, these bushes would attack him because they were quite prickly, and they would basically just cut into him. And he said that I wasn't happy because I kept bleeding every time I tried to go and doing. And my daughter told Prime to cut it down. They did nothing. My daughter even sent photographs to Prime and told them to cut them down. They did nothing. And the garden as well, he had no access to the garden for 10 years because the garden was in such a state. So he's a pensioner. He can't go to the local park to walk all the way to local park and enjoy the day. And he should have a nice garden for him to go out. And he's also a nature lover. He would have given him some space for him to go out and maybe watch the wildlife if the garden was nice enough for him to go out there and sit and get fresh air, especially during the period of the pandemic. That would have been essential for him. And it was not just Mr. Sim, but there's also another pensioner in the building as well. He complained that he had not been down to the garden because there's nothing out there, because it was just ugly and dirty. Like, there was nothing to see. There wasn't any wildlife. There was we've never had a butterfly or ladybird or any bees in the garden. So what was the point of having a garden if you couldn't enjoy it? And he was paying this company to do the gardening.
The £9,000 they charge for 1 year.
Exactly. It's like 9,000.
Was it every year, 9,000?
No, it was just 1 year. It appeared. But I think the garden, the fees for the gardening was about £150 a month we were paying them.
Per leaseholder?
No.
A whole of 150?
Yeah, because it's just a small garden.
As against 9,000?
Yeah, well, the thing is that was the garden maintenance cost for this garden every year. And the guy who came to do the gardening, he wasn't a professional gardener. What we needed was somebody who was a professional gardener, because all he did was just take a pair of shears and chop the bush down where it was thing. That's all he did. And the rest of the garden he just ignored. He didn't do. And also my tenant as well, over the years, she's been living there since 2012, and she said this building is all. I've never been able to enjoy the garden. Like, I would have liked to be my daughter to go out into the garden and play during the summer instead of having to go to the park.
Yeah.
We have a space right there.
Yeah, it sounds like if you had the garden, it would be quite a homely feel, and you'll actually come to know your neighbors much better. Everybody would want to come there and meet up or whatever.
Yeah, but we've never had that. That's down to the fact that this company, Prime Property Management, just completely neglected it. But still, they were charging us for all that maintenance. Yeah. And Prime then, at the time, instead of actually doing the work, they just carried on as they are and collected the money.
I guess because the directors were happy with whatever they were doing.
I don't think the directors were happy, but the directors were extremely ignorant, and they didn't know how to manage the building. So they largely left it to the managing agent to do what they want.
Yes.
And
so basically it was like a vicious circle. So the agent thought, we will do things when the directors tell us, and the directors thought that, we've given the job to the management agency to do the job, and so they were just depending on each other, and it was,
Yeah, the directors in this building, they have this mentality that they don't need to know anything, that they can hire a company, and this company is professional, and they will do all the work. Because they don't know, how do you know whether or not this company is professional or not if you don't know yourself?
That's a life thing as well. In life also, if you're wanting something out of somebody, you need to know what you're expecting.
Yeah.
What you want from the other person or other company.
But these people...
you can't just blindly offshore your responsibility or your... without understanding what you're trying to get.
Exactly. And that's how these people think. Their priority wasn't to do the work. Their priority was just to be directors.
Yeah, okay.
Like in Animal Farm, they just wanted to be the supreme in the building.
Yep.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
in the end, there was the louvres in the garden there where I noticed that it was getting so bad because the times I have looked at them, the louvres were so rusty that the metal was just simply falling off, and it was creating like sharp edges.
It's quite dangerous as well, isn't it? Tetanus issues and all that as well.
Oh yeah. So and we have kids playing in the garden right where the louvres were, and we have these louvres which were so out of condition. They were presenting a health risk to the children, and one of the
health and safety.
Yeah, health and safety. And when I was nominated as a director, one of the things I did was to get a quote to change the Louvre. But because Prime did not change the director over, they kept the old directors on. Like, I was not able to get them to proceed with the Louvres.
So they did not recognize you as a director, although you were a director from this end.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. They did not recognize me as director. As like I said, they resented the fact that I had been
questioning them,
criticizing them very harshly. Yeah, very harshly in a lot of cases, because they were totally incompetent.
Basically, they could not afford to be possibly transparent with you, so they didn't want to interact with you.
Also, because they knew that I would sack them. Essentially, they knew, and obviously they wanted to keep the money, right? So they knew that.
And the contract.
Yeah, of course. Well, the contract comes with the money, doesn't it? And because they refused to acknowledge the fact that I was trying to do some repairs in the building and stuff, and that I submitted the quote that I received to them and to tell them to proceed, because they could, there was they could change it, but they refused to do that. In the end, I had to spend my own money to change that.
Did you try to get other directors which Prime recognized as directors?
Well, there was two. There was myself and James, and they didn't recognize us
either. Okay. So the old ones had gone actually, but they were still trying to talk to them.
Well, the old ones hadn't gone because they weren't removed from the company's house, right? Okay. So they weren't gone. They were still listed as directors. And as far as Prime was concerned, those were the directors, and they. So
why? Whose responsibility is in company's house to be updating company house?
Prime. Yeah.
Is it okay?
They charge us a secretarial fee to do that.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I could do it myself easily enough, but you need to have password access and things. But, Prime was playing a dirty game, essentially. For one, they wanted to keep the contract. Like, they didn't care about, and they wanted to make sure that those directors who would keep them on, the incumbent directors would be the ones, because those ones, they would keep on Prime, right? And then, like I said, I had to, in the end, spend my own money to change the Louvre in the garden.
Because you believe so much about welfare of the people there, health and safety issues and all that. You did it out of your pocket.
Yeah. So I paid for that, and it was also a good deal, because I had expected it to cost a lot more money, but it turns out that those Louvres, because they had to be made to measure, so they couldn't just be bought from the shop. And I had looked around, and I had consulted with a few companies, and this company was very professional because they did.
You were happy with what you got in terms of value and price.
And of course I personally wouldn't have cared if Prime goes to prison. But in order for Prime to go to prison or to be held accountable, somebody has to get hurt.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So do I let somebody get hurt?
No, okay.
Or do I take it on myself to do that? So I took it on myself. But like I said, I wouldn't care if these people go to prison. So, but if a 5-year-old or if a child stuck its hand in there, they could easily slash their wrist or end up with a very long scar.
So you did good in getting it sorted. Yeah.
And again, Prime was still not responding to me or to being recognizing me as the director. So I had then to tell Oliver to call again another meeting and tell George and Nicole to go, because they were definitely not doing the work. And this time there was that's when Mamas decided to say, okay, I'm going to be a director as well. And he stepped up to be a director. I said to him, you shouldn't be a director because you haven't done any of the work. You don't know what's going on. But he didn't listen, so he thought he'll be a director, and then he took it on. And this time, Prime, they removed George as a director, and they replaced him with Mamas and James. But Nicole, they still kept her on, even though she was incommunicado. From there, these directors started trying to do things. They thought that they could do the job, and they started.
So these are new directors, Mamas and
James
was the other one with you.
Yeah,
they were not adding before.
Yeah,
but they added him and not you.
Yeah, so they said it was because I haven't paid my service charge for years. Well, I can't be director. That's not true. Legally, that's not true. Okay, I have a building where the director hadn't paid the service charge for 6 years. He's still a director. So these people didn't really understand things, and and because Mamas was totally inexperienced, he doesn't know what he's doing. Again, he's another person who starts. But he starts thinking that he can do. He
set it all right.
Yeah, so he starts try to do things in the building, and the first thing he did was totally demolish the garden.
Oh dear.
Yeah, you've seen the pictures where he removed all the plants in the garden.
So what was his reason for demolishing the garden? Or
he just thought we'd clear it out.
So it was his sole decision. Did he discuss with other people?
Yeah. The other issue with the Prime is that, because Prime had left the garden neglected, the trees were overgrown. We had problems with trees where there were shallow roots, and they were starting to damage the garden because they were on the surface rather than growing downwards.
Yeah.
So you can see in the photographs where they were lifting up the paving stones in the garden, and Prime never mentioned that in any meeting. They never noticed that, and then it was down then to me to sort out the problem, and I had to call in a gardener. We went and I walked around with the gardener, and we discussed all the issues, and we identified there was about at least 6 trees that should be removed from the garden because they were all the roots were growing all over the place, and eventually they would end up damaging the brickwork if they go, and also damaging the building as well when they grow. They were some distance away from the building, but the garden wall. They would damage the garden wall. There's already slightly damaged the garden wall. And
just another question I was just thinking about was, do you have any evidence that Prime, this management agency, any of those people actually came and visited the property on a regular basis for the maintenance and inspection?
Well, in the meeting, we asked Prime if they ever inspected the building, and the property manager, Demi Williams, this was in the AGM in 2024. She said she visited it twice a year. I've asked her for the reports for every time that she's visited the building. So far, they have not produced it.
Yeah, and any evidence also would be a good idea, isn't it?
Well, if she has visited the building, she should have put that in a report. But like I said, I asked for the reports to see what issues she noted in the reports. And so far, she has not given me any reports.
And also, you could ask, okay, did you meet any of the leaseholders?
No, they've never met any of the leaseholders. Nobody's ever seen them.
Exactly.
This,
That's what I was trying to get to.
Yeah, nobody's ever seen these people.
Basically, I would expect, if the management agency is coming to inspect or, etc., they would at least meet, 1 or 2 handful of people, leaseholders, to talk to them for any issues or anything as well.
No, they've never. Okay. Well, Mr. Sim is retired pensioner.
So he's always there.
He's always there. So if they were coming to meet anybody, they would meet him. But like I said, they ignored him for 7 years, never spoken to him. So no, there's no kind of meeting evidence that they ever
came. Okay.
Yeah. So there's the other problem with Prime is they lie a lot, which I've noticed in the emails they sent out are totally inadequate. For instance, recently they sent out the email saying that there's going to be internal redecoration, and that was all the entire content of the email. And I said, I went back to Demi and I said, what are you talking about? And then she sent me a quote from the handyman who is going to do the decoration, and the list on there that he was going to do the painting, the painting in the building. And I asked I said, why didn't you need to actually send a
breakdown of
a breakdown, yes,
what is going to be done.
Yeah, I thought that was so
obvious.
For a professional company, that would be obvious. But the email was just a short 2-sentence message. And I had to go back to her. She gave me the information. I had to actually tidy up the information and make it presentable and send it out to all the leaseholders so that they can see what is being done. So essentially, it's just a breakdown of the work, how much it's going to cost, which company is going to do it, when it's going to start, when it's going to end, and of course how the cost is going to be allocated between the flats. Like we received nothing like that. But going back to the garden, it's like Prime has never identified all the issues or the problems within the garden. So I had to call in the gardener, and we were the ones who identified the problems. I knew already. I just needed the gardener to confirm my suspicions about the serious potential problems that this building could face in the future if we don't remove the trees. So after this problem was identified, I then had to myself go and submit an application to Lewisham Council to cut down the trees, and also we also needed to have the garden re-landscaped because it was just so awful and it was so neglected. When we had the sewage spill, it was in the garden, and Prime just left that sewage in the garden. You can see it there where the trees, where the plants around that part had died, and that's how they left it. They didn't do anything further with it. So I told them we need to re-landscape the garden completely and make the garden a more presentable place, more family-friendly place for children, because there are children who play in the garden, with the tree roots uplifting the pavements. They were causing a potential trip hazard with children's playing there. So I applied to. So again, it's all my work to have to go to Lewisham Council and apply. Submit an application to them and submit a plan of the new garden to them as well. So all the work that has been done in this building has always been me who has been driving it, and this company has offered no assistance apart from lots of resistance, lots of bad manners. If they don't like the way you speak to them, they just ignore you. And
there's no engagement.
No. Mm-hmm. I know that the problem with the building is down to the leaseholders as well, because there is extreme ignorance among these people.
Because the directors could at least object to it and get them to do things.
Yeah.
But they're not doing that either.
Because the directors themselves don't understand. Like Mamas, he didn't understand. He wasn't even aware of what a garden is, essentially. So, and you can see the decision that he made in the garden, what he did with the garden, that's now causing us even more problems, because essentially we can't cut down the trees since he decided to remove all the plants. It's going to cause environmental loss if we cut down the trees now without any plants.
It helps reduce the pollution, at least in the immediate area and all that as well, isn't it?
Yeah, and you have to remember the fact that we have an underground car park that is right next to the garden, and the air vents are letting the pollution out into the garden. If we didn't have if we didn't have the plants in there, then you're causing pollution to the kids who are playing in that area. It's not about just having no plants, or the fact that it also doesn't look very good. It's like the whole building.
Yeah, concrete.
Yeah, concrete. I mean, for all the years that the state of this building, none of the leaseholders have ever complained about it, even to Prime. And that's, in my opinion, that's how this company has gotten away with their management.
Yeah, and more so from the directors.
Yeah, from the directors. None of them has.
So basically, at this stage, they're doing nothing and carrying on
Well, they, Mamas and James, since he became director, he
Since
has tried.
2024.
He has taken it on himself that he decided, okay, now I'm going to do all the maintenance. I'm going to restore this
So
building.
he thinks he knows better, and he doesn't take input from other leaseholders or even other directors.
No, he doesn't take any inputs from the lease. So
Does he live there in that building?
No, he doesn't.
But he knows how to manage it best without taking input from people who.
Yeah, he's extremely ignorant, and he's a classic example of of hubris, like you said. Like I explained to you, somebody who's extremely arrogant and egotistical and thinks it. Somebody who has delusions about himself, and he's made some awful decision. The primary one is the fact that my plan was to re-landscape the garden, and yet his plan was to demolish all the plants and leave the garden with nothing but bare soil and brick wall, and and that was just.
That's just weeds are going to grow in time, isn't it? If you don't have plants, then there'll be weeds.
And also, I forced through a change of gardener as well, because the gardener that was prime hired was totally incompetent and useless. So I told them we need to have a new professional gardener, and the new professional gardener is costing us more. It's costing us double the money. But that's my intention for that, was that we would have a garden to maintain. But now that we don't have a garden to maintain, it seems
waste of money.
Yeah, a waste of money to be paying the gardener.
Dear. So you've got into a contract with the gardener. That is why you have to carry on paying, even though there's no work.
I'm not sure what contract they've signed with the gardener, to be honest. Not sure. But the problem, you've seen the latest.
So when this garden was demolished, this person did not know that there's a Mamas, yeah. That there's a contract for gardener to be, gardening for rest of the year.
No, he knew. He was the one who signed the contract.
Oh my God! So he knew he was going to be paying 200 or 300 pounds a month. That is 3,000 or whatever a year with no garden in place.
Exactly, he knew. I told you these people are on a different level of stupidity.
That sounds quite interesting.
It's like, and he has. It's just bizarre. I said to you, you can't have a garden like this. You need to put the plants back. And I told him specifically that what you've done now, it means that we cannot proceed with cutting down the trees. You need to, first of all, put back the plants that you took out. Because if you don't put the plants back into the garden, when you cut down the trees, you're going to leave these gardens desolate and barren. And you're going to cause environmental pollution. But he still doesn't understand. We had a very good plant in the garden, the English ivy, that was grown along the wall of the underground car park, and English ivies, has been proven to be one of the best plants to counteract like air pollution and environmental.
And it looks beautiful as well.
Yeah. And he completely demolished that plant. And I said, you need to put that back. So far, he hasn't put it back. But I withdrew.
I guess these kind of personalities, if they're not listening, I think first thing is that they should be interacting with the leaseholders and other, directors and things like that, and make a decision.
Even if they're interacting with the leaseholder, you're dealing with people who just don't know what is what in this building, who don't know how things are done, who don't know what's the difference, between right and wrong.
Yeah,
they've just.
So he could easily exchange.
Well, I have been telling him, but his attitude has been to take it on himself and make his own decision. Prime he has absolutely no experience, but Prime has allowed him to do all of that. I mean, if Prime was a professional, they should advise him.
So basically, Mamas decided and Prime executed the garden demolition. Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah, that's how it. And also, if you look at the building itself and look at how the state it's in, it shows how lacking in intelligence. The people.
So for Prime is already getting some monthly payment for the gardening services. So could they not start doing something under that?
Well, it's saying that what they were doing is that they're waiting for the trees to be cut down before they replant. But no, you have to. I have said to them that you cannot cut down the trees. You need to put the plants back. And so far, they are just not doing it. Like they need to cancel.
So there's a deadlock. So they want to cut the trees down first before doing anything, and whereas there is scope for doing other things because they're being paid for it anyway, and they could at least do something while.
Yeah, well, they need to start to replant the English ivy back and leave it to and other plants in the garden and leave it so that there is for another couple of years. I've told Mammoth that you need to put it back, and so far he's been
stupid about it.
Yes, he's been stupid about it. Exactly, he doesn't understand.
So in this case, Prime is just doing what? Just taking the easy option and not doing anything because Mammoth, who instructed taking out, has not asked them to put it back in. Okay.
Yeah. So there's and that's what I mean. This company is supposed to be a professional. They should have stopped the directors from doing whatever the director's decision. They should have actually understood whether something is professional or not professional and taken the right course of action, and even bypass the directors if necessary, because their primary job is to maintain this building. Their primary job is not to follow commands from directors, really. Their primary job is to ensure the health and safety of the residents in this building, and to ensure that this building is maintained up to a reasonable standard. And if the directors are not doing their job, then Prime should have told the directors, "You're not doing this.
We recommend this."
And because Prime is so, again, they don't know what to do. I mean, they have never shown initiative, in my opinion, in how they manage this building.
It sounds like both are equally qualified or unqualified people.
Oh yeah,
in their
both
roles.
of them are unqualified. Previously, Prime Property Management, they've taken money for Section 20. They've charged us for times when they have done projects in the building. We had windows and door replacement. I think it was around in 2019-20, and Prime Property Management took a fee for that. And you've seen the photographs, how poorly that was done. They took the money, but they never came to inspect the work. And we had the gates that was repaired in, I think, 2023. And again, it was over £10,000. So they took management fee for managing that project, but they never visited the site. Or during the installation.
That they visited
they never visited the site. I came in on the weekend and I found all the gates around the building were wide open, and just left wide open. The pedestrian gates and the car park gates, they were all wide open. Nobody from Prime informed us that there could, these gates are going to be open for the weekends. So it's very poor management, in my opinion. They took the money, but they did, we paid them over a fee of like £2,000, and yet they didn't even visit the site to see the windows for the company that did the windows, the doors, that placed the windows and the doors. They weren't a professional company. They did a lot of damage to the building.
Oh, what kind of damage?
Well, you see the photographs.
Right. So it looks like it's going to carry on like this because it's like a deadlock, isn't it? So how do you propose to move forward, or can you move forward, you think?
With Prime Property Manager, I intend to raise this matter with the MPs, and I intend to also raise this matter for myself and Mr. Sims and Simon in the building about how this company has treated the leaseholder, and because this company needs to be held accountable for what they've done. Managing agents are just ripping people off left, right, and centre. You look at the building; it's going to cost us at least 150,000, maybe more, to restore this to a acceptable standard.
This concludes our podcast on Prime Property Management. Please do join us again for the next podcast when we will be discussing the problems with right to manage. We thank you for your time and attention.